I'll just do this, and hypothetically, I'll be live. It sure looks like I'm live, and if I'm live and you're watching, welcome to my first ever Next Level Nonprofit video live stream. My name is Josh Hughes, and I'm saving you time, cash, and sanity as we all pursue the next level of nonprofit video together. It's kind of funny that today my live stream about an overview of live streaming got screwed up a little weird and had some technical issues, which is a great start to a live stream that's teaching you about, live streaming. But here we are, nonetheless, streaming and live and living the dream, and that's what we're doing. So if you're here in the comments, welcome. I'm glad to have you live. If you're watching later, that's totally fine too. I get it. Everybody's got stuff going on in their lives. Right now, you've probably got a lot of, Netflix series that you're binging and stuff like that. But I'm going to just dive right into it. I'm like way off my game because YouTube got all screwed up like a minute and a half ago. And I had to dive into those technical issues. But now that we're here, I will try and recover, bring it back, recenter, and let's get into it. So we're talking about live streaming today. So the first question we really want to cover is who should be live streaming and why would they live stream? Now I know what you're thinking. Right now we're in quarantine. Everybody should be live streaming. That's not necessarily true. There are pros and cons to being live versus being in the sort of pre-recorded video spectrum. You've got the opportunity to get a lot of things done with each of those two kinds of content. So narrowing down whether you need to be live streaming and whether you need to be pre-recording your content is important too. So let's talk about the wins of live streaming. The wins of live streaming are that people can interact with you live. Like I just said, welcome to all the people in the comments. You can, not that there are any people in the comments right now, but if they show up, boy, will I be welcoming to them. And the benefit of interacting with you is that you're establishing that emotional connection with your tribe. And the whole point of video for a nonprofit or church, as I'm always saying, is to unify and mobilize that tribe to create impact in the world around you. Right? So being able to interact with your tribe and engage with them is really powerful for a nonprofit or even a small business or anything like that. There's also an authentic feeling to a live stream that anything could happen, like what just happened, where I, freaked out and had to argue with YouTube, shake my fist for a little bit. I'm going to open this drink and try and catch my breath here. Sorry if that was super duper loud, but that happens. But there's that authentic, anything can happen. We have no idea what's gonna go on, and even that can be fun because watching people that you care about scramble and be frantic and not know what's going on, that can be a good time. This is that time, I guess, because I was just scrambling around. Another big win of going live is that it saves you time on the back end, right? I don't necessarily need to edit this stream. All the content is gonna be there when I'm done, and people can go back and replay it. So that's something that's really helpful. Now you can also, as a fourth win, you can cut a live stream into many pieces of shorter content with some editing. So now I'm basically getting 5 videos for the price of one, right? Because I can take this video, which I will probably make over the course of a half hour to 45 minutes, something like that, and by the end of it, I will be able to chop that into smaller pieces that I can then share and have as, more quick-paced content. I can add graphics over top of them, those kind of things. So that's really valuable. But there are, of course, some downsides. So let's talk about those. It is mentally straining to do a live stream, especially if you're a solo operator, which frankly most churches, nonprofits, anything like that, if you're doing a live stream like this one, just a talking head live stream, then you are probably running it by yourself because there's not a huge amount of staff, there's not a huge amount of budget around this area. And it's really mentally straining to both be thinking about what do I need to say, who do I need to address, where's the camera, make sure I'm making eye contact, all those different pieces. And to do that for any prolonged period of time is just, it's a lot. Now that doesn't mean it's not valuable, it's just that's something to keep in mind. Showing up with notes can really help with that. I've actually got a computer monitor right here in front of that camera right there, and it's just covered in notes. So if you see me glancing over there, it's so I can see what I'm supposed to be telling you about. That's the whole idea behind that. It can also be really frustrating to deal with things out of your control, like I just had to do when YouTube flagged my content as having something copyrighted in it before I even went live. I'm not really sure how that works, but that's what YouTube saw, and so we had to have a chat, me and YouTube, which mostly just means me yelling, refreshing the page, and starting over, to create this live stream. And that can be really frustrating. It can also get you down really early in the process, but don't give up. A lot of those technical things are things that happen once or twice, and then you get the hang of, oh, here's how I work around that problem if it comes up. So they're not things to dissuade you, just something to be aware of. There's some frustration that goes with that. So, bring some snacks or some drinks or, whatever it is that's going to help you get through that in a nice, chill fashion. Unlike a pre-made video, you need to constantly reestablish value to your viewer with a live stream. So when we have a pre-made video, right, we get to hook our viewer with the title and the thumbnail, just like Tim over at Video Creator says. We hook them with a value proposition, and then we need to deliver that value right in the beginning of the video so that they know, okay, this video will give me what I want. Then they'll usually stay. In a live stream, we don't have that benefit because we have to hook people with our title, but they may show up late. So if I've done my 30-second value proposition pitch, like in the beginning of this video when I said, hi, I'm Josh, I save you time, cash, and sanity as we all pursue the next level of nonprofit video together. If I don't do that again, someone may show up in the middle and not realize what the value here is. So you need to be constantly reestablishing value. And that could mean that you just need to have a big stream of value to deliver to people, like I do right now with all my notes, where I'm constantly delivering value on the premise of this video because I'm going through my notes and I'm teaching you things. But a lot of live streams are also relational in nature, right? Establishing that connection with your tribe. And so then it's harder to keep some concrete value apparent to your tribe. And so then maybe the benefit is when you see new people pop in, you welcome them. You say, oh, hey, good to see you. And that establishes the value of I'm interacting with the person who's in charge of this tribe. Or maybe every so often you take questions or things like that. So just something to be thinking about again is, a downside is that you have to constantly circle back and reestablish value, which going back to point one, that's pretty mentally straining when you're trying to juggle how much value do I deliver before I reestablish what my value is, and have I acknowledged the camera? And so, there's just a lot to think about. But with all of those things said, live streaming is a really powerful, fairly new tool that I think churches and nonprofits especially are not making the best use of. There are two ways to live stream something, right? So you could be live streaming a copy of something that's already happening. For example, if you're an event like a church service, then you could be live streaming your church service in a way that people are watching something else happen. And that's like the fly on the wall or the spectator kind of live stream. And that's what most churches do. They live stream their Sunday services if they're streaming at all. But there's a more powerful version of a live stream that is meant to be a live stream, where you take the time to interact with people. And like what I'm doing here, it's just a camera, it's just me and you, and we're just having a conversation. And that kind of live stream is really powerful for establishing the connection, which again helps to unify your tribe. And then you have a lot more sway when you try to mobilize them to action. So when I'm speaking to you one-on-one, if I'm able to tell you a story and bring you into the emotion that I'm feeling, and you know that I'm talking right to you, not to a room full of other people, then I have a lot more emotional hook when I start to turn that around and say, and here's what we should do about it. Here's the application. I'm talking right to you, looking in the camera. Now, churches can get around this on Sundays by working in a little bit of both. For example, a church that I work with, Crossroads, up in Westminster, Maryland, they have started adding a digital lobby to their live streams. So before, during, and after the services, they cut every now and then back to this digital lobby where someone is speaking just to the live online audience. And they're asking them questions or they're talking about their week. It's just a relational component to what is otherwise basically just a videotaping of something that they could get by going to the building. And it adds something that is a new value that you can't get just by going to that event, which is a big draw to their live stream attendance. And of course, right now, metrics mean nothing because how are we supposed to track how much of that is the digital lobby versus how much is, well, we're in quarantine, so everybody's here, but their live stream viewership is way high. So things to consider. I'm going to move right into my next section here, which is what tools are we using? And that's probably, if you've already experimented with live streaming, the tools are probably what you're here for. But I'm going to take a drink first, so hang on. My quarantine poison of choice, by the way, has been elderflower water. I don't know if you've ever had it, but it's really good. There's an Aldi like 2 minutes from my house, so we walked up there socially distancing and safe and basically bought them out of it. It's so good. Okay, moving on. Tools that you should use in your live stream. No matter how you decide to live stream, what kind of live stream you're doing, or where you want to live stream to, there are a couple things that are always going to be the same. The first thing is we need to talk quality. Quality of your live stream is way less important than substance of your live stream. So don't let the cost of cameras or lights or any of that stuff be a barrier for you. If all you use is your phone, you can still create an engaging live stream as long as there is a value there for your viewer. Oh, that was gross. Sorry. As long as there is a value there for your viewer. Now, as far as the tools that we're going to put in place to deliver that value to your viewer, this is where we get into a standard set. There are 5 standard tools that every live stream is made of. It begins with inputs. This is like your cameras or whatever. You capture something, that's an input. Your inputs go to a switcher, which, just like its name says, it switches between those inputs to change what's live. Then your switcher goes to an encoder. This is a thing that takes a video signal and turns it into a bunch of ones and zeros and sends it up to the internet. Basically beams it up to the mothership. Then we have a distribution platform. That's the mothership. It's waiting for a stream to arrive, and then it takes that stream, that ones and zeros, turns it back into a video and puts it in front of the world. And then, and this is the piece that a lot of people forget about, there are endpoints. Endpoints we have very little control over, but they're things like phones or desktop computers or TVs. Where your stream ends up is an endpoint. This is where it gets recreated and someone actually watches it. And we need to consider that part of our system. So let's go through these a little bit more in depth. We'll start with the inputs because they're first. Your inputs can be a number of things, but probably there will be cameras involved. You can use any camera with some kind of live output. You could use a webcam, you can use a DSLR with like a little HDMI port on the side, you can use a cinema camera, you can use your phone, anything like that. You just need to make sure that it has a live output. Now, for a lot of cameras like DSLRs or whatever, they may have, for example, here is a D5600 by Nikon. It's a fairly cheap entry-level camera. I think it's $400 to $500 about there. And it has on, let's see, this side, there is a mini HDMI port in here. And from there, I could connect it to a switcher. The problem is that it doesn't have a clean HDMI out. So let me turn this on and show you what I'm talking about. If I open this up and I put it in live view so that we're looking through the camera, right there, what you're seeing on the screen, all that, like, there we go, we're focused. All these little information displays, they're overlaid on the output. So it means that, oh, I just took a photo. That was good. So it means that when I use my HDMI out and it gets to the switcher, it still has the little E for empty and the different, settings on there, my ISO. All those settings are overlaid, so it's not a clean output. If we don't have a clean output, we get a lot of visual distractions. So clean HDMI out is something you can just Google, by the way. Like you can just say, hey, does the Canon M50 have a clean HDMI out? And Google will tell you. So it's not something to be too concerned about finding. It's just a thing to consider. Most cameras above the like $700 price point, you can pretty much guarantee a clean output. But with the cheaper ones, you want to make sure before you get it. And the reason that they don't have that is, some of those cameras are set up to basically plug in an external monitor for the photographer. So it's just feedback on your settings and stuff that makes it bigger. But that doesn't help us for live streaming. A webcam is a live output, your phone is a live output. So you've got all these different options. But if you're starting from zero, also make sure that you invest in tripods and batteries and things for those cameras. The kit can get expensive quickly. But again, you can also do this with your phone. So don't let the price stop you. So we've covered cameras. You've also got audio inputs. There is a saying in the industry that sound without picture is radio, but picture without sound is broken. And that's especially true in a live stream where you don't have a whole lot of fancy graphics or titles or overlays to keep capturing people's attention. If they show up and the audio is bad and it's just a talking head like this video is, they're going to immediately turn around and leave. So you can use the onboard microphone of your camera, but I don't recommend it unless you are right up against the camera. So if you're doing a live stream, maybe from an event where you're holding the camera in your hand and it's like right there, if you're here with the camera, you might be able to get away with onboard audio from the camera. But if you're not, like in my case, I'm a lot further away from the camera. I've got a lapel microphone here that probably pops every time I touch it, so sorry about that. But I've got a lapel microphone here that gives you a lot better quality sound than you would get without it. You can also use wireless microphones like the Ceramonic series. They have some that mount 2 cameras. But getting the external audio into your camera system is really important. You can also use, if you really want to get crazy, you can use like a mixer. Like this is a Behringer XR18 audio mixer. And if I was doing music or something like that, then that's probably how I would go about it. And then the last input you want to consider is your graphics. You've got probably a logo or some overlays you want to use, anything like that. And there are a couple different ways to get those into your stream. So your graphics input could come from a laptop connected with like an HDMI cord, or they could be built into your switcher. And we'll get to that when we talk about switchers. They're next, so it won't take very long. Okay, great. Laughing at my own jokes. Good. Let's just move into switchers, actually. Let's just get there. So there are two different kinds of switchers. There's software-based switchers and there's hardware-based switchers. The advantage of a software-based switcher is that it's part of your computer, so if you own a laptop, you don't necessarily need to buy anything else. There are free options. The advantage of a hardware-based switcher is that it's got a control surface, so you can operate it without looking at it because you can remember which button does which. Versus on a computer, you've got to move the mouse and actually click on something. Software-based switchers, some popular ones are OBS, Wirecast, and Livestream Studio. OBS is a free open source option that does everything the competitors do. It's really powerful. And the way that they usually work is you create basically scenes or different views that you can then click on to switch between them. So I have a scene in OBS right now that is this camera, my Nikon Z6, and then just to demonstrate having multiple scenes, I've also got a scene that is a camera right behind it there. So I clicked on that scene and now you're seeing a new video feed. And if I click on the screen capture scene, then you see another video feed. So we've got all these different options for what people see. From there, I think my stream URL might have been in there, but at least the key was covered up. That's okay. We'll get to keys and URLs in a little bit too. No matter which switching solution you use, you will need to make sure that your camera, the feed out of your camera, is converted to a input type. Let me say that a different way. I'm just talking all over myself right now. Recenter. And let's move on. Your camera may have a mini HDMI out, it might have an SDI output, or it might have, God forbid, like a RCA output. No matter what's coming out of your camera, your switcher will have some kind of input that it wants. If it's a computer, you'll probably need external capture cards, like the Elgato HD60S. In fact, I'm using one right now, right here. It looks like this, and it looks out of focus like this. There we go. Looks like this. HDMI comes in the bottom, and USB comes out the side here. And then the USB plugs into my computer, and my computer treats that as basically a webcam input. So then in OBS, which is the switching solution that I'm using, I can tell it use this webcam instead of the other webcam. And that's really all you need for that intermediary piece. With a hardware-based switcher, if your camera doesn't speak the right input language, there's not going to be some one-size-fits-all solution for it. You'll need to get what's called a scaler or a cross converter. And that will take one kind of input on one side and shoot out a different one on the other side. The Decimator MDHX is a great solution for that. Blackmagic has some smaller ones, or some cheaper ones I should say, called microconverters. But hardware-based switchers are also very picky about resolution. So if you are outputting 1080p 30 on your camera, but your switcher wants 1080p 24, then they won't be friends. They won't talk to each other. And that's where, instead of using the cheaper ones that's just, HDMI in on one side and SDI out on the other, if you get something like a Decimator that is a cross converter, it will also convert the frame rate of your input so that everything plays nice with your switcher and you can continue having a great time with your process there. Now, from switchers, we go to encoders, and I'm going to sort of combine these two sections because a software-based switcher will almost always be your encoder. So the purpose of an encoder, big picture, it sends your finished video to the internet, right? Turns it into ones and zeros, beams those up to the internet so that somewhere people can watch it. A solution like OBS will work as an encoder for you, but if you have a hardware switcher, you'll need some intermediary step to encode that video because the hardware switcher is still working in analog video. The best way to do that, in my experience on the low budget end, is to get a capture card like this HD60S. Bam, remind you what that looks like. Get a capture card like that and input the signal to your computer, and then YouTube will go live with a webcam, or Facebook, or whatever distribution platform. So you can just check, use my webcam, and then you're live, but you're using a hardware switcher. The computer just thinks it's a webcam. You can also install OBS as well, and so now you just have one scene in OBS, and your switcher is the one webcam that OBS is using, and that's totally fine as well. There are hardware solutions for encoding also. So We've got switcher outputting to a capture card like a webcam. We can output the switcher to a capture card that's in a software switcher like OBS or vMix. And then we've also got the switcher outputting to a hardware encoder. And some examples of that are like the Living as One Prism encoders or the Boxcaster Pro. Anything that they're basically a black box, and you put it down and it makes your stream happen. And so you don't have to think about it. They're really reliable. They're a lot less finicky than the software streaming solutions are. So that's a major pro of those, but they're also really expensive. It's like $4,000 for the Living as One Prism encoders, I think. So that price is a factor to consider for these things, especially. Now, no matter where you send your video or how you send it there, whether it's a hardware encoder or a software one, you are going to need to basically give your encoder guidance on how to send your stream. And we do that using RTMP. RTMP is an acronym that stands for Real-Time Messaging Protocol. That's really fancy. Instead, you could think of RTMP as meaning route map. That's what I like to think of it as. It's a map that tells your stream where to route the video. So the RTMP is made up of a stream key and a stream URL. So if you need to stream somewhere, no matter where you're going, YouTube, Vimeo, doesn't matter, whatever solution you're streaming to, they will give you an RTMP URL and an RTMP key. And you will copy those and paste them into your streaming solution. Again, whether that's a hardware one like Living as One or a software option like OBS, that's always the way it will work. Now, some software switchers will let you natively sync to something by logging in. So like there are streaming solutions where you can click log into Vimeo and then you just log in and it automatically links it up. And that's fine. It's not super predictable, so I would expect to be using RTMP most of the time anyway. But if your solution allows that, it's a great way to save yourself some time and some effort, as long as you're willing to put your password in the hands of a third party, because there's always that security concern. The other thing to think about when you're encoding is the bit rate. Bit rate is how much information you're sending at any one time to your streaming solution. So like, for example, right now I have a bit rate of 3,500. What does that actually mean? It means that I am sending a certain amount of information per bit that I send to the internet. So in this case, I think I actually don't know the math off the top of my head, so I will have to put that in post. We'll just pretend that I covered all the math. But the higher your bitrate is, the better quality your video is, but the harder it is on your internet connection to actually handle. So your internet connection has some amount of bandwidth. That's how much information can I actually send out to the world at one time. And if you use too much, then you get interruptions on your stream and it starts to get laggy. But if you send too low of a bit rate, then your stream starts to look really pixely and gross and broken apart, and that's no good either. So those are the four pieces to consider when you're actually encoding. You know, do you want to native sync, or do you need to use a stream key and a stream URL? And then how much information are you going to send at a time? What will your bit rate be? Now, once you've sent your stream up to the internet, now we're talking distribution. This is how do we take, now it's up there. It's in the metaphorical cloud. How do we get it in front of people? And there are basically the big four streaming platforms. I'm going to add a fifth to the list. So we're going to talk about the big five. The first one, and probably the most common, is Facebook. Facebook is really good for connecting with a tribe you've already established. They have a massive user base, so the odds are that your tribe is already there, and they have a really easy process for going live. You click live right where you would make any other post, and it just sort of happens. The pros to using Facebook, again, is that your tribe is probably already there. The cons are that they don't give you a whole lot of feedback and analytics information when compared to the other options. They'll still tell you things like reach and impressions and views, but Facebook has a very liberal definition on what counts as a view, and a very strange definition of what counts as reaching someone. So it's hard to turn those metrics into actual usable data when you're tracking and trying to, okay, how can I do better next time? But on the other hand, if you're just going live quick from your phone or something, Facebook is almost always the right answer because most of your tribe are there already. So if they don't know a schedule, if this is an irregular post, then Facebook is most likely to get that notification in front of them. Now, another option is YouTube. YouTube, in my experience, is a little more robust. It's really good if you're using YouTube already as a tool for your nonprofit or church. There are some really streamlined interaction tools. They even let people, do the super chat like you get on Twitch, which we'll get to. so that people can donate to you throughout the stream, which is always nice. The downside of YouTube could be if you have not already established a following on YouTube, then those notifications may not get to them, or you might need to use one of your other social platforms like Instagram to push people over to your YouTube live stream in order to get any traction with it. So that's something to consider. I've given you a lot to consider in this video. Hopefully one day there will be some graphic overlays. That's not really a hopefully, it's definitely going to happen. Just not today. So YouTube is really good for interacting with people. It's great for collecting donations, and it's really robust. YouTube, in my experience, fails a lot less than Facebook does, which probably is because right now everybody is on Facebook because of the quarantine. So that's something to consider. I'm going to have to cut that out of my vocabulary. It's going to bug me for like the rest of my life now. Okay, another of the big four, Instagram. Instagram is really good for man on the street, quick updates, this wasn't planned kind of things. And the reason is that Instagram, one, locks you into using your phone. There are some ways around it, but they're really clunky. So you're already basically holding the phone in front of you, you get the audio that you get out of the phone. People are forgiving of that kind of quality as long as you're not trying to pretend it's something really polished. So if you're like, this is our video podcast, but it's vertical and the audio sounds like garbage, everyone's going to turn around and leave. But if you're saying, hey, you know, we're out here doing a food drive and I just wanted to give you an update, meet some of the volunteers, see what's going on, that kind of a live stream works really well on Instagram. So those quick updates, those sort of building hype around something that's happening, you could do behind the scenes at a rehearsal. Like, hey, things are sounding really good today, can't wait for Sunday, and you just quick, pop up a Facebook Live so that people can see what's going on. That's really powerful. I might have to suggest that to some of my clients. So that's a really good way to use Instagram to reach people, and you get the benefit of, from Instagram, you can then, if your story is connected to what you're live streaming about, people can click right through into your Instagram story and use that to get like a call to action or something like that. You do not get a whole lot of options for interacting with people other than seeing their comments. So if you wanted to drop a poll on there or something like that, that's something that you'll get better results using YouTube or Facebook than you would with Instagram. Now, the fourth of the big four is Twitch, and I'm not going to say very much about it other than if you're a church or a nonprofit, I suggest avoiding it. Your tribe are not likely to be there already, so you're trying to convince them to create a login and sign into an account on a platform they don't already use. And Twitch is also aimed towards gamers, and there are lots of features about Twitch that are really good for gamers who are live streaming, but as a church or a nonprofit or a small business, they are not super great for what you're doing. There are better alternatives. So I wouldn't even bother investing in the Twitch ecosystem right now. The fifth option would be Vimeo, and this is the one that I'm adding to the list. Now, Vimeo's free tier does not allow you to live stream, but when you get to the paid tiers that do let you live stream, it has some really powerful tools, like the ability to rebroadcast natively to other platforms. So if your church, for example, has a Facebook, a YouTube, and a website, this is the case for one of my clients, and you want to stream to all of those places, but you want it to be native to that place so that people on Facebook don't have to leave their Facebook to get to YouTube. Then you can stream to Vimeo, and then in your Vimeo settings, you can rebroadcast to other social media accounts natively, which means that I'm seeing the stream on Facebook and on YouTube, but both of them look like they're native to that platform. So my YouTube users don't need to click a link and leave YouTube, and my Instagram users don't need to leave Instagram, and all those kinds of things. Again, Instagram is really clunky, so I probably wouldn't do it this way, but you can use an RTMP, a route map, to tell your Vimeo stream to go to your Instagram. So you have all these options. Vimeo is also sort of the robust, mature, grown-up dad of the video hosting companies out there, if you were going to give them a role. So Vimeo is a little bit more reliable and trustworthy than even really YouTube when it comes to just solid, no buffering issues, no whatever. Vimeo does a really good job with all that stuff. So those are all really good reasons to use Vimeo, even if you're using it in concurrence with the other options. That was a big word, $5 word right there, concurrence. Now the last factor we need to consider is endpoints. You have very little control over what device a user chooses to watch your stream, right? You can't tell them, okay, you can only watch this on your phone, or you need to watch this on your laptop. You also don't have a lot of control over the audio that they're getting. You can't tell them, hey, put on good headphones so you can hear the bass in our worship set. That's not necessarily an option. So you need to consider that when you're doing the rest of your process. When it comes to your audio inputs, if you know that your users will probably be listening on subpar equipment, which they will probably be listening on subpar equipment, you should mix your audio on subpar equipment. So anything beyond just one microphone, you should be listening through like really cheap old Apple iPod earbuds and mixing for just that medium. Because if you can make it sound good that way, then you can make it sound good anywhere. The same thing could be said for using a cheap TV, where the TV speakers will be really lame. That's another great option. You should also decide to commit to vertical or portrait based on what your users are doing more than what you are doing. So there are some things like a podcast where it's roundtable discussion where it kind of needs to be landscape because you need to fit everybody in the frame. But other things like a quick update to your viewers, you should be deciding based on previous stream metrics. You know, okay, well, do more people watch me on a desktop or do more people watch me on their phone? If they're watching on their phone, then you should be holding your phone vertically. And that's really all there is to it as far as that decision. When you get to audio input decisions, if you're just speaking, you can probably get away with just using your phone or your onboard camera input. But anything more than that, and you really need to start looking into either microphones or even a mixing solution, like for music, you need to have a separate mix for your live stream to get the best results. Okay, those are all the pieces technically of a live stream. We've covered them. We've gone through. Now I'm going to be back tomorrow at 1:30 to talk about what to do now that you are up live on the internet. We're going to talk about how to interact with your tribe. We're going to talk about troubleshooting your stream, things that can go wrong, like today when YouTube decided it didn't like me. We're going to cover all that stuff, and that's tomorrow at 1:30. So hopefully I will see you then. Until then, I'm Josh Hughes, saving you time, cash, and sanity as we all pursue the next level of nonprofit video together. Let's keep growing, fam. See you later.